Hello, this is Joel Evans. Welcome to our video slideshow on presenting your best self-brand. We hope you like it. This is a companion video to designing your best self-brand. It may be helpful to view that video before watching this one, as it includes some of the more basic information that you would need to embark on self-branding. Keep in mind, before the first step comes the decision to take it. Your self-brand won't get done by itself. You have to acknowledge that you need one, that you need to update it, that you're changing careers and need to change it. But you have to be willing to develop the self-brand and communicate it to others. So take that first step, get started, and carry through. Sometimes our personal brand plan can be sophisticated and complex and include a large number of activities and factors that describe us. This slide is a good example of a personal brand plan. While you don't necessarily need to go through every one of these activities, you should look at them, understand them, and be able to determine what's important for you to include in your personal brand plan. I will give you a few more seconds to look at this figure before we go on to the next slide. To guide this discussion, we show our process for projecting your self-brand in chart format. In our first video on designing your best self-brand, we went through each of the steps in the process. In this presentation, we provide more observations, tips, and examples, and less emphasis on describing each step. What we have facing us as we begin is a giant puzzle. We have to determine what pieces are important to us and how they all fit together. And we have to do it in a way that we are looking to identify our best attributes, our best self-brand, and project that forward to the appropriate audience. We need to power off the start. Even though it may be a time-consuming set of activities that we have to be involved with, we need to power off the starting blocks, which means that we're highly motivated to both get started and keep on going with developing our self-brand. Many companies want to be able to see in your self-brand the answer to this question: how bad do you want it? It's important to show our motivation level, our aspirations, our teamwork, everything that shows that we will do whatever it takes to get and be successful at a job. So let's start and make things happen. Step number one is to articulate the self-brand you perceive for yourself. As we begin the process for projecting your self-brand, let's quote an old saying: if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that's from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. Why is this relevant for self-branding? If you do not know what your self-brand is, you may end up in the maze below, now and in the future. So get out a piece of paper or go to your preferred writing device, electronic. As we said before, honestly state to yourself the self-brand features that you believe you possess. Is your perception realistic? Does it represent the past, the present, the future, a combination? And it should probably represent all three of them, the combination. Then articulate your perception of your self-brand in 25 words or less. You want it to be something that's succinct. That becomes your positioning statement. It should highlight your best attributes. Keep on revising your statement until you believe it truly represents you. Now let's consider these two examples. From business to community, I am a social media trainer and consultant, specializing in LinkedIn branding and recruitment. And from personalbrand.com, I'm a publicity and marketing strategist who helps experts, authors, and coaches go from hidden gem to admired industry leader, even a household name. And look at how simple, direct, and terrific this self-brand statement is. I design and develop experiences that make people's lives simple, catchy, and also very descriptive at the same time. We should not want to be viewed this way, which is basically as a lone wolf, isolated figure who's sitting in the corner or next to a wall, who's got potted plants, who's got things hanging on the wall, and basically is by himself or herself. We should not want to be perceived in this way. We need to be more animated, more present, more sociable. Let's move on to step 2. Determine how others perceive your self-brand. And let's get some great insights from these 3 quotes. Clarifying people's perception helps explain why they react to you differently. If you are right about how people perceive you, you are in a stronger position. Ironically, a person who knows you well but doesn't especially like you may be a better judge of your character than your family and friends. That is a truly interesting observation because we don't usually ask people who don't like us for their feedback. You must deliver your brand to show a positive experience for others. You may see yourself as flexible and open-minded, while those who know you may say you are wishy-washy. And one of the things that we don't want to be is wishy-washy. That's not a good impression for any position at any time. So let's give some tips using an exercise from Christy Hedges, writing for the Harvard Business Review. Select 5 people. Choose those who see you repeatedly in relevant work situations. Ask for a face-to-face meeting because you can get more effective information looking at the person and interacting that way than over the phone or online. Ask 2 questions. What's the general perception of me? What could I do better that would have the most impact on my success? Then we need to manage our reaction. Resist the temptation to explain yourself. Defend your actions or reveal disappointment. The quality of your feedback will only be as good as your ability to remain comfortable while receiving it. And finally, look for themes and repetitive points when you finish with the interviews that you're doing. So now we turn to an example, a real-world example, from Samantha McLaren, writing on LinkedIn. I don't think you're tough enough for this business. This feedback was the big aha moment for Carla Harris. Now the vice chairman and managing director at Morgan Stanley, Carla was given this critique by a senior managing director 5 to 6 years into her career. This made her realize that smarts and hard work isn't enough. She needed to work to change how she was perceived. She needed to get people to perceive her as she wanted to be perceived. If we want to be perceived as a leader, we have to demonstrate leadership qualities. We have to make sure that those qualities are clear in the self-brand that we present to others. And one thing that we do not want to do is to be viewed as a loudmouth or a noisemaker. That's a person who basically likes to hear themselves talk, who is loud and extremely opinionated. That is not how we should want to be perceived. Look at this picture, and you can see the people below the guy yelling are kind of turning colors because of the fact that they're so upset by them. Our third step is to do a current SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The key is for us to be as honest as possible. Sometimes the truth hurts. It may be stressful to be so introspective, and we may have trouble confronting our limitations. To start, we should use a blank slate that we then fill in. The more complete our analysis, the better we can capitalize on our strengths and opportunities, include both the short run and the long run in the analysis. As Marcy Martin notes for Business News Daily, in a SWOT analysis, think about what you want out of it: a new job or a new achievement in your current position, personal growth, or something new. The SWOT analysis really should be reflective of the reasons that we want to do a SWOT analysis and how we want our career to evolve. For tips, we turn again to Martin. Identify the strengths that set you apart. What are you good at naturally? What skills have you worked to develop? For weaknesses, study the areas you need to improve. What are your negative habits? Does your education or training need improvement? For opportunities, look at external factors you can take advantage of to pursue a promotion, find a new job, or determine a career direction. We want to look at the state of the economy, industry growth, new technology. Finally, look at threats to your career. Is your industry changing direction? Is there strong competition for the jobs for which you are best suited? For an example, we look to Sharon Mason Parker, writing for Practice Builders, with regard to a medical practitioner. And you can see in this chart the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that a medical practitioner could identify and then act upon with regard to a medical practice. If we're lucky, we'll have this pop up in our head. This is the sign you've been looking for, that by doing a SWOT analysis, we are able to determine what it is that we should be embarking upon for our next career move. No matter what, we need to think about things differently. We not only need to look at how we're strong in the areas that others are strong, but we need to look at our strengths and opportunities with regards to how we can be different. How can we do things differently from others? We're now ready for step 4. Identify the areas you need to improve upon. Our activity at this stage falls into 2 categories. 1, which of our weaknesses do we want to improve upon? We can identify both the weaknesses that we need to improve upon and those that we can leave alone because they're not essential with regard to the career path that we're choosing. 2, how do we expand our skill set and enhance our existing skill set? We should divide weaknesses into personal shortcomings versus skill shortcomings. No matter what, we should never lose sight of the fact that we must continually maintain and enhance our strengths. Yes, we probably want to reduce the effect of our weaknesses, but we also really want to capitalize on our strengths. With regard to tips, for each weakness that we choose to address, a game plan is necessary. So lay out the weaknesses to improve, then enumerate what is needed to convert that weakness into a strength. Yet again, this is part of the process for projecting your self-brand. From Nandy Chu, Medium's Possible Plan. We often tell ourselves we are not capable of controlling our own destiny. Yet, instead of hiding away or believing we can't change, we should always be willing to work on our weaknesses as easily as if they were a to-do list. So we should examine and try to improve on our weaknesses. Where do you stand on these strengths and weaknesses as identified by Jackie Schmid for Great America Financial Services. There is a whole list of positive things, strengths, and their accompanying negative attribute, which would be a weakness. So we should look at all of the factors on this list and do our best to have our attributes be in the white category rather than the red category. We want to have our strengths and not our weaknesses. So identifying the areas that you need to improve upon are like a chess game. We're trying to understand how we can maximize our position relative to our competition, which is the same premise as trying to maximize our strengths and leave as few weaknesses, or in a chess game, as few openings for the opponent as possible. So we need to look at the board, look at all the different pieces, and we need to plan several moves ahead, not just the current move. And under no circumstances should we allow this weakness to percolate and occur. If we're somebody who has a short fuse, as is shown here, we should do everything that we can to fix this weakness, to get ourselves to calm down, to relax, to take a deep breath, to say a simple phrase to ourselves, because we can't let our emotions explode. That doesn't work for anybody. At step 5, state your ideal future-oriented self-brand. This stage is aspirational. As we look to the future, how would we like to be perceived? That changes over time. This step enables you to determine your self-branding gap, the difference between your current skill set, your self-brand, and the skill set you would like to have, the ideal self-brand. When you reduce your self-branding gap as much as you can, you are ready to move forward. Be sure you are honest and realistic with yourself. For our tips in this stage, we turn to a chart by Garajan, Gelb, and Vanderveer that appeared in Business Horizons. And what we see here on the left side of this figure is that there's a desired personal brand and an employer brand fit, which are at the bottom and top of the left. And that is, in the middle, our current personal brand. So the difference between the desired personal brand and the current brand and the employer brand fit represents the gap analysis. So when we see that we have a gap, we want to reformulate our personal brand, and we want to have tactics to implement it, which means maybe we have more education, maybe there's more experience, but in any event, we're moving towards trying to develop our ideal future self-brand. Let's discuss this example. So we see that there's a name, title, and company. Hi, I'm Josh Broughton, Associate Director of Inbound Marketing at Collegiate Education. Then there's a personal branding elevator pitch, that short pitch that encapsulates ourselves. I'm a strategic marketer seeking to envision and communicate the future of higher education marketing and to initiate campaigns and programs that maximize the return on investment, ROI, for clients and students. Why do you do what you do? So what's our rationale for wanting to pick this career? Education is the only thing proven to grow economies exponentially and empower individuals to achieve their full potential. Who do you want to meet and why? So who's the target audience? I aim to help marketers, technologists, and educational professionals help others pursue lifelong learning. So we could actually set up a chart like this for ourselves and identify these 4 areas that might help us a lot in coming up with our ideal future-oriented self-brand. So here we see several attributes that could be an ideal self-brand: confidence, determination, patience, preparation, and flexibility. How do you fit in with these 5 attributes? There are 2 ways to look at the thought bubble that's shown here. One way is to look at it as how you would answer an open-ended question such as, describe why you would be the best candidate for this job. So it gives us the ability to fill in our own thoughts, and the more specifically we have, determined our self-brand, the better the answer could be. The second way of looking at this bubble is a more negative way, and that is that you're trying to reach your ideal brand and you don't know how to fix something, or you don't know what to do, or you're asked the question about, please describe your most recent job. What was the biggest challenge there? And you come up with a blank. We need to work on not having blanks, that we think about as many aspects of our brand as possible, and that we be able to articulate them if we are asked. In step 6, we want to match your self-brand to career and job opportunities. You want to make sure that the self-brand that you are projecting or going to project is consistent with the career and job opportunities that are out there. Our updated self-brand must align with the career and job opportunities that we wish to pursue. 3 scenarios are possible. 1, we believe our self-brand is already aligned to the marketplace. So that means that we believe that we are okay and ready to go in terms of pursuing a job, pursuing a promotion, that we have all the things necessary to go on. 2, we believe our self-brand only requires tweaking to be aligned to the marketplace. So we believe that there's something minor that we need to fix, and we go about doing that. So that would be, for example, taking a continuing education course to stay current on social media tactics. And 3, we realize that our existing self-brand is poorly aligned to the marketplace. So maybe the job skills that we have now are declining in importance, or our industry is declining. So we have to reposition ourselves. At this point, we should have adjusted our skill set. Don't promise more than you can deliver. It's better to under-promise and over-deliver than the reverse. Be sure to do your homework. That means researching the marketplace, individual companies, and jobs, or job titles, or job categories. Do the work and find out what it is that is the optimum for the job you want, and make sure that there's a match. Do research. Your personal brand and the company's brand should intersect, which means you need to know what the potential employer the brand represents. As the chart from Hubert Rampersad, writing for Operational Excellence Society, indicates, the more overlap, the better. In this figure, we show that there is a disconnect between a person's self-brand and the corporate brand, the way that the company sees itself and projects itself. So the more that there is an overlap, the better it is for you. We don't want to be in this particular situation if we can avoid it. So here is a great example of involving LinkedIn with making sure that your self-brand matches up with career and job opportunities. In this example, on the left, there's a job description, which is the the way that the company, the potential employer, defines a job. So it's got a brief introductory paragraph on what the job is, and then it describes the key skill sets. On the right side of this chart, you see the check marks, which represent how well a particular candidate would match up with the job description and the skill set. So, it's checked off for product management, 5+ years experience, the San Francisco Bay Area, a bachelor's degree, skill in product management. So here is an example of how you could do the same thing for yourself, where you look at a given company's job description and the skills that they would like the person to do, and then you have for yourself a checklist of how closely you match up with what the company seeks. What we don't want to do is end up being the so-called square peg in a round hole. Obviously, this package is not going to fit in the hole. And that means that we're on a different wavelength than the company. And that's not an ideal situation. In this chart, we look at repositioning in terms of matching our self-brand with career and job opportunities. And this is a case where a person decides that they want to reposition themselves, that the direction that they started out going in isn't necessarily the one they want. So if we follow the arrows on the left, the solid arrows, we see a person doing an entry-level position, then going up to a second-level position, a mid-level position, and a senior-level position. But as we can see here, the person may decide that the career path that they were on isn't really the one that's for them, and they could decide this at virtually any point. That's why the dashed arrows go both ways. So it means that we would end up with a new career path and rebranding ourselves. So again, this is all, in the repositioning to be consistent with what companies are looking for. The question posed here was, is, and will always be important. Who do you know? Do we have contacts in the right context? Do we have a network? Do we have connections? And it's important that if we have them and we could use them to help us further our career, that we make sure that what we're trying to project about ourselves is a good fit with what a company is looking for as represented by the contact, the connection, the network. We don't want to put somebody on a limb where we tell them that we're a good fit and we ask them to help us, and they do, and it turns out that we're not a good fit. It's going to turn out that that person doesn't want to necessarily help us again. So now we're at step 7. Communicate your updated self-brand. Select the ways you will communicate, such as printed media delivered electronically, such as a resume or a cover letter, social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and others, professional sites, LinkedIn and company job sites, in person, via phone, tele-interviews, face-to-face, emails and text messages, and business cards. Please be sure that your self-brand is synced across all the channels you use and that all channels are up to date. Here are important tips from Undercover Recruiter. Your personal brand statement is 1 to 2 sentences, addressing what you are the best at, the value that you represent, who you serve, the audience, and how you do it uniquely, USP, unique selling proposition. It sums up your unique promise of value. Whom are you targeting? Stay somewhat focused on a sector of the market. Don't spread yourself too thin. Look at what target audience would benefit the most from your services and zero in on this. Have an elevator pitch ready. It is a succinct summary of you, named for the time to ride an elevator, from the bottom to the top of a building, roughly 30 seconds. Do you have one of those? Do you have something? It's that 25-word statement. For an example, we turn to motivational speaker Tony Robbins. According to his website, Tony Robbins is an entrepreneur, a #1 New York Times best-selling author, a philanthropist, and the nation's #1 life and business strategist. To show how he uses multiple media to communicate his self-brand, he has over 3 million followers on Twitter, 5.2 million followers on Instagram, and 4.7 million followers on Facebook. That's some audience to work with. As with Tony Robbins, it is important for us to be able to use multiple media to communicate our self-brand. And this slide just highlights some of the mass media that are available, including a lot of social media for us to think about using. In the next two slides, we show the value of teamwork. So here are people sitting around a table together. They're working together. They have a quiet cat under the tabletop to keep them company, but they're on the same team. This slide also shows the value of teamwork. It enables us to all be more successful than we would be individually because we combine our different strengths. So we take what I'm strong with and we collaborate with others who have different strengths to affect the greatest possible outcome. We are now at the final part of the process, and that is feedback. Regularly assess your self-brand. Do not assume because you have done what you can to improve and that you have communicated your self-brand well that you have it made. First, we know that your perception of yourself has changed, but how do others perceive your new self-brand? Even with a well-received new self-brand, others may still be better qualified for specific jobs than you. That is why matching your self-brand to specific career and job opportunities is so vital. I could be a great candidate and be competing with 5 other people who are great candidates as well. Here are 3 tips. Fine-tune your self-brand as necessary, but try not to constantly reposition yourself. That would be confusing. And keep in mind that the feedback loop requires periodically revisiting step 1 in the process and acting on the other steps as needed. For our example, we turn to Ruby Lee, writing for PwC, and she says the following: your personal brand evolves over time. You can shape how others perceive you. Take actionable steps with a time frame to achieve them. Always be open to feedback. Remember, you own your brand, and you do. And as further indicators of Ruby Lee's thinking about her self-brand on a regular basis, on the left side of this chart, it includes Ruby's personal brand themes. Then it's Ruby's peer review, how others perceive her. And then finally at the top, what Ruby believes others think of her. And you see that how others perceive her is reflected in the personal brand statement. She's all about people. She quickly builds relationships, adapts well. She's fun, full of passion, and often the one who laughs the loudest. She's creative and energetic. She's natural at sales, influencing, and negotiating. So we should all have a chart that looks like this, where we have other people saying such positive things about us. When we get feedback, we should always thank the person who provides it. Even if the feedback is pretty intense, we shouldn't let it hurt our feelings. We should view it as constructive criticism and thank the person who was willing to spend the time and effort to provide it to us. We would not like to be perceived this way. Tweet, "This is my friend Woody. You'll have to forgive him. He hasn't been out much." So Woody doesn't realize that Twitter has expanded the number of characters that we can use in our tweets, and he's still confining himself to fewer characters. When we decide that we're going to change careers, we may need to take a step down to take steps back up. So we should appreciate that we are not always on an upwardly mobile track, that we may need to reinvent ourselves and move back up. And as we can see here, this is a person who in their current position had declining results, and now by switching their career path, they're able to start moving on the way back. And we should never be afraid to ask for help from our friends, our professors, our colleagues, our connections on LinkedIn. We should always reach out and see who is able to help us, and then listen to what they say. Here we show self-branding, putting it all together. And in this first chart, we see on the left that there are inputs into our brand. The target audience that we want to reach, the tangible credentials that we have, such as work experience, the intangible credentials, such as motivation and people skills, how we communicate the credentials, both tangible and intangible, to others, the position, the job involved, the stage in our career, the recommendations that we get from others, and how we're portrayed in social media. So in the middle of the chart, we see our perceived self-brand, which is step one in our self-branding process, which is how we see ourselves. The bottom shows how others perceive us. Remember, perception is reality, so it's our actual self-brand. And the top represents the ideal, how we'd like to move our brand forward. And the right, which is fed by all three of those, represents the gap analysis, what we need to improve as we go forward. This second chart on self-branding, putting it all together, goes through the series of steps that we could embark upon to do the process well. So we include in here, do a critical self-assessment, research the marketplace, then research specific career paths, determine the future goals as well as the current goals. So it's the current goals, what are our goals now, but what are we looking to in the future? We need to build our skills. So skill building to work on both strengths and weaknesses. Know what is required for specific career paths and focus on points of distinction. Create and continuously update one's self-brand. So we should regularly update and customize the resume and other documents, and do not be too abrupt in shifting one's brand concept. We need to communicate the self-brand, seek out and listen to feedback from others, use LinkedIn and other networking groups. And then finally, work at jobs that best fit your evolving skill set and offer the most long-run potential to further enhance your brand. To sum up, at this point, it's time to think about success. And we want to make things happen. We wanted to make things happen at the beginning of the process. We want to really make things happen now. We've done everything that we can do. It's time to go out there and create our new reality. And then finally, As this chart shows, if we read the middle line, we need to always listen to add value. We need to add value to the company. We need to be human, so we need to be humble. We need to engage, which means that we interact with other people and we be respectful. So we don't assume that we know it all and that we're better than anybody else. Thank you.